Biodynamic agriculture has been practiced for over a century and was initiated by Dr. Rudolf Steiner in Germany in the 1920s. And since then, since the 1920s, farmers and researchers have developed biodynamics. So it's not stood still. And it was the biodynamics came out of Rudolf Steiner's response to a time that was very agricultural and very much about wanting to find ways to increase the health of the earth and increase the health of the people in relation to the earth. And he had very practical and also spirit sort of inspirations as well about how to work with nature, basically. So it's a really it's a holistic way of working. And today, biodynamic agriculture is practiced in a wide variety of regenerative farms and gardens and ranches and orchards and vineyards, and in a wide variety of climates and ecological contexts and economic settings. For instance, in India, where Peter Proctor worked for many, many years, and really extraordinary work they do there. And of course the cow is very revered, and the cow horns and manure we'll talk about next, because so the biodynamic preparations are all to do with increasing the mycorrhizal and bacterial health of the soil and the liveliness of the soil. So that means the life in the soil. We're talking worms, we're talking the bugs, we're talking a whole range of soil tilth development. So it is a scientifically very sound method, and it's only when you kind of look into it that you understand, and by doing the course I was able to really get a hands-on idea of how it works. So several biodynamic preparations are applied as potentized liquid sprays. So you know what I mean when I say potentized. That's kind of made into a concentrate, like you would with a concentrated essential oil, or maybe a concentrated herbal extract. So it's like that. And it nurtures the health of the farm. Cow horn manure, which is what we're going to be doing now, it is called Biodynamic 500. Don't ask why, it's just, and essentially it's made by applying, you use only the horns of a cow, a lactating cow, one that's died, and they don't kill them for the horns. It's usually just how it's happened. It's usually was the natural attrition. The cow has in her horns lactation rings, and that's calcium. You can't do this preparation in bull horns. It doesn't have the calcium. Nor can you use bull manure. You have to use cow manure again because of the calcium. And so it's a really wonderful, and that's the mineral calcium is brought into the soils through the basically it's a fermented cow dung. So it's made by packing, it's stirred up, it's packed into the cow horns, placed upside down during the winter months for 6 months, and it's fermented. When it comes out, it doesn't smell of manure. It's just like, I'll show it to you. It's very much like an earth. And it's the basis for soil fertility and renewal of degraded soil. So it's applied 4 times a year, usually. Spring, so October and November, and then in autumn, in March and April, or February and March, depending on, we've been getting sort of later autumns. And the benefits are strong humus formation. It has an increased soil bacteria such as rhizobacter activity or nodulation. So there's more nodules on the legumes, which means more growth and more leafing and much more vegetation. And an increase in the mycorrhizal fungi. Do you know what mycorrhizal fungi is? And they're hi-fi. So it's mycorrhizal fungi is that fungi which is produced by all plants, and which is their communication, their way of communicating with each other. So trees have this fungi running between them all under through the earth. And the reason that's so important, and all the plants have this fungi, and it's a communication method by which they organise obviously the bacteria, but also the life forms and their actual growth and use of nitrogen. And so there's a lot of really extraordinary information that goes on. Paul Stamets. I'm going to actually give Richard a reading list, or at least a kind of a contacting list, so you can read more about this, because if you want to. So I've got a whole lot of links. There's also improved crumb structure and resultant improvement in the soil tilth. So crumb structure you want, because that means the earthworms can get through. It means that you've got an earth that, not just earthworms, but the roots, and it means that there's a lot more life. Aeration. So we're going to talk a lot about aeration, because that's one of the ways that biodynamics works to increase the possibility, to increase the life in the soil and also the life in the water. So when we talk about the stirring, when we get to the stirring, you'll learn about how we produce more aeration and how that affects the water. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Earthworm activity is increased. This is all through the application of 500. And the really extraordinary thing about the application of this biodynamic prep is that research has shown that farms that have had 500 prep applied over time, their water absorption is, they require less irrigation by 25 to 50% than conventional farms, which is, a real statement about how it affects the soils. A deeper rooting system is developed in all plants, and it works equally well on all soil types. That's from clays, volcanic, and weathered silica. Now there's other preps, but I'll talk about that as we go along. So that's what we're going to do now, is go along to Murray's wonderful stirring apparatuses, and we're going to learn about the stirring of the preps. And
so we're looking at the life forces of the water and how we can best sort of charge it up. So
you know how you feel when you're around a stream, you feel really enlivened. It's that element of the water with the air.
So part of that process is to get your water up to about body temperature, because bacteria will actually proliferate at that sort of temperature. And so we're adding a bacterial preparation, and by oxygenating it with the stirring process, and going one way and then reversing it, we're sort of creating what they call chaos. So it creates this sort of dynamic in the water that energizes it and brings the bacteria to life. So what we've done here is we've got the barrel half full of water, so we might just do a little, we're waiting for the water to get a bit hotter. Because I've got about 400 litres there, so we've just got to work out our right ratio of cold to hot, because that's past the 38 at this stage, although we'll test that shortly just to see where it is. And we can do a mini sort of sample until we get it to the required amount of cold water to hot water in this barrel. So I'll just pop this in now, so that basically we can give you a feel of the stirring process and a look at the stirring process.
I love your paddle, honey.
We may not, but this is just giving you an idea how that process can work.
So you have a look at the water, because this is part of the whole thing, is that you've got that lovely eddy. So you were talking streams here, and the idea of it. So you're getting quite vigorous.
The blokes tend to get more vigorous than the girls, as they get into more flow of motion. So what we're trying to do, you can see that vortex starting to happen in the middle here.
That's what happens in the stream. It's going one way, and then
the bottom of that vortex, there's a lot of energy built up. We're trying to get it up to a speed where that vortex is almost to the bottom of the barrel, and then we change direction. See the oxygen coming into it? See
all those little bubbles.
Now don't worry about getting some of this cow manure on your face. It's very good for your complexion.
Now us with this and that's alright. And we do stir
Well,
for about an hour.
once you get your speed up like that, you can just sort of hold it in a nice flow, you know.
And it's quite neat because we've done it like this so you're not having to, see, you just
Right, how much
doing
of
it
that?
yourself.
Oh,
Yeah, so this is just your water right now, eh?
yeah. So I'm doing, this is your practice run.
Yeah.
So how much of your 500 would you add in the whole barrel?
We're using, so this is about 600, we're getting 600 litres, so we'll have about a third of this.
Is there a time that you go for one direction?
It's very
That
personal.
vortex to the
It's
bottom?
very, yeah, pretty much
There's
personal.
no,
I'll just get that bit more
so you
centered
just
for
go as long as you like on one and then back the other way. But you get into a lovely sort of dream and it's very wonderfully enlivening. I always feel much more lively after doing it. Not that I don't feel lively now, but you know. And I'm just going to thank you all. It was what we realised is that this has actually got a really nice texture to it, which I wasn't expecting, and it's going to be enough.
Already enough water.
Normally what we do, and so we'll make them around about this size, all of them. Normally what we, and see we can actually put something in there and then form it quite nicely and sort of solidly in there, but we're going to have to put it into something plastic, unfortunately, to keep it moist.
Yeah.
Because normally we'd put but that's really nice. So
is that what you would have used the clay for, would be to keep it moist, right?
yeah,
Okay.
so that's all right. That's no problem. So here we have, normally we make this, but they're quite a thing. We've got 5 different preparations which all look pretty earthy, right? Different colours. They are 502 to 506, and there's also 507 in my back pocket, which is a liquid. So you can make a compost without the preps, but the preparations enhance it with the inclusion of these minerals that come from the herbs. So 502 is yarrow, 503 is chamomile, I've just got to remember this, 504 is stinging nettle, 505 is oak bark, 506 is dandelion, and 507, which is in a liquid, is valerian.
Okay.
And it's actually wonderful the way these work. So they all magnify the healing properties of the herbs, and they inoculate and guide the development of the compost. So we add a small amount to each. So we'll halve these, because we'll have half on one side and half on the other, so that you're kind of inoculated from both sides. So just briefly, composting was part of the normal 20th century, early part of the 20th century farming practice. Everybody composted, and it's a major component of organic and biodynamic work. So it's at its most basic level, it's simply a pile of of degenerate organic materials like leaves and sticks and animal manure, cow manure, and that sort of thing. But Steiner wanted these to actually enhance and to quicken the process. So 502, I'll just give you a brief because it's actually really lovely to understand. So yarrow, Steiner says, like sympathetic people in human society who have a favourable influence by their mere presence and not by anything they say, so yarrow, in a district where it is plentiful, works beneficially by its mere presence. Anyway, the preparation stimulates the delivery of potassium, silica and selenium activating bacteria, which is so important for us because here in New Zealand we don't have enough selenium in our soils, and so it's those potassium, silica and selenium activating bacteria. So it's the bacteria that activates those minerals that yarrow acts on, and it helps to combine sulfur with trace elements. Steiner recommends the yarrow because of its ability to bring light forces to the soil through its connection to sulfur and potassium. So there's more there, but I think just at the moment we'll leave it. But just to say that the process of making this yarrow preparation, and I've done it in this course, is actually to prepare the fermented heads of the yarrow flour in a stag's bladder, which was quite something. And you stuff the bladder with the flour and hang it from a tree during the summer, which we did. And in the autumn, the dry bladder is prepared to be buried over winter in a small earthenware pot surrounded by healthy soil. And it's then dug up, the bladder that is, the following spring, and the flour preparation is stored in a glass jar and kept moist. So that's and that again is that process that they discovered that did what the 500, what we're going to be, the 500 brew that I've shown you, that kind of wonderful, goes to this earthiness. 503 is chamomile or chamomilla, Matricana chamomilla, and chamomile assimilates calcium and potassium. Manure treated this way has a more stable nitrogen content and with the added virtue of kindling life in the earth, so it will have a wonderfully stimulating effect on plant growth. So it's made from the flowers of the German chamomile, so the Roman chamomile is more the scented chamomile that's used for making essential oils. This is the German chamomile, which was once used for preserving meat. Isn't that interesting? Chamomile can also be used medicinally to promote digestion and for its calming effect. So again, it's a calming effect. It enhances the activities of calcium, sulfur, potash, nitrogen and oxygen, and strengthens the plant's regenerative abilities, as well as azotobacter activity, which is the best bacteria for nitrogen fixation. So I won't tell you about that. The 504 is stinging nettle, and it's the jack of all trades, Steiner calls it. It can do very, very much, and it has a kind of iron radiation, which is almost as beneficial as the whole course of nature, as our own iron radiates in our blood. So it's like it helps the proper decomposition of the compost heap, the stinging nettle. Nettle is a really important herb in Steiner preparation because of these properties, because of its jack of all trade properties, and we use it also in stinging nettle. If you know about herbs, is amazing, and nettles are a nutritive. They're incredibly nourishing for people who are ill. So it's a really great drink for the composition and for rehabilitation when people have been ill. It aids chlorophyll formation, green in plants, and stimulates iron, potassium, calcium, magnesium, nitrogen and sulfur activity in the soil. So again, it's the stimulation activity that these herbs are providing. Oak bark, it restores order. Then we use the calcium. So preparation 505 is used to provide calcium and phosphorus absorption in the earth. It's the absorption of the earth, and provides strength for the plant to maintain its representative form. So we're putting these into the compost, and then the compost around the plants, and so that's what will happen for the plants. The ash of oak bark contains up to 78% calcium, which was fascinating for me when I discovered that. And Steiner believed that the soil needs to contain the right amount of calcium if plants are to be healthy and free from disease. And that's why rock dust and things like that, the old, the things that we use from Taranaki and from old mountain soil, it helps to prevent fungal disease, and when used over time will eventually raise the pH levels in the soil, which means that it goes to more alkaline, which means that it helps with acidity in soil. And of course the oak bark there's a preparation that goes with that as well. And then 506 is the dandelion. And they're all just such lovely herbs, and they're also well found here in New Zealand. So they're not sort of odd herbs. They're really well known herbs here. So we need the salicylic acid to attract and draw in the energies of the universe, really. So preparation 506 utilises the dandelion flower to stimulate potassium silica bacteria in the soil, to enable it to work more effectively with the growth forces of the plant. So, I mean, I know this is a lot of information, but if you just get the sense of the incredible complexity and richness and mineral activating qualities of these herbs, the silica inherent in the dandelion, when made into preparation 506, helps to increase the flowering and fruiting stages of the plant it's being applied to, meaning you get healthier, more vibrant looking flowers or fruit. So all of these are going into the prep, right? And all of those qualities are being helped. Now 507 is valerian. It's preparation 507 is used in conjunction with all the other preps, and what we do is sprinkle it over the top of and it's around, and it's to form an atmosphere around the compost pile and help with humus formation. So if I just give you the idea, myrrh, frankincense and myrrh, the oil myrrh actually has the plant, the actual bush in the Sinai desert and really hot places. When it's really, really hot, it sends off a liquid like a vapor, like a spraying vapor, and that's around the plant. Well, the valerian does that, not in quite as obvious a form, but it forms a vaporous kind of protection. It helps raise the temperature of the compost. It stimulates the phosphorus processes and mobilises the phosphorus activating bacteria in the soil, as well as selenium and magnesium. It also prevents the flowering and fruiting process from becoming too excessive. If sprayed onto blossoms in spring, it can provide protection against late frost. It's warming. So that's just I'll give you all these connections, but that just gives you a really lovely idea of what this is about. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to take these. Murray, meanwhile, is moving the big piles of things around and preparing our ground, because he was going to do that a bit later on. So would somebody like to halve these, or each of you could take one and do 2 balls with it. So what you're going to do is kind of pour it. Now this is a good size ball, so you might need to, so just with your thumb make a nice little indentation as if you're going to bake a little bowl or something, and then pour half. Don't worry if you get a couple of crumbs. Pour half of this into here, and this is the 502, so that's good. And you can see still the actual herb, and then we're going to just place a little drop, like even if you just put your hands into the water. It's just going, I'm going a little bit slowly because I don't want to yeah, what do you reckon? Have I done about half? Maybe a little bit more.
Getting pretty close.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that. And then if you just do even this water here, just get a little sprinkle like that, and then just place it in the middle and make a nice little ball again. Okay, so if you get a ball that's about that size, and then I'll just go and get a plastic pottle that we can place them into, and we'll have to put the 2x2 and put 502 like that, and then 503 so that we don't forget, because they need to go in an order in the compost.
Right, here we go. So generally with a heap we want it to be no more than sort of 1.5 meters wide, but try and get it as high as we can and as square as we can. So we use this carbon nitrogenous stuff here. I'll fork it over.
It's not nitrogenous, it's carbonaceous.
Sorry, carbonation, quite
It's
right.
just a lovely word to say, I just wanted to say it.
And by having that on the bottom, you can use corn stalks or anything like that. You'll sort of create a
Aeration
more aeration. I'll actually spin that way because most of the wind comes from that direction. I mean, the weight of the heap will weight it down, but it still helps if you can get airflow through it. One way you can do it is using a hay bale, and then you basically make a V with the hay bale. So you stand them up, the slabs of hay, like that. That gives you an airflow right through the middle. Some people put big Novaflow coils in the middle, which basically let the air in, but because we turn the compost a lot with the tractor, it's not quite as necessary, but we'll use this to its advantage. So there's another pear header on the dash of the car.
So the elements of the compost being air and water are really important.
Yeah.
That should be about the last of it. What I discovered once we got into it was we could use the hemp itself, because hemp is mostly made into rope. So we got the stalk of the hemp and whacked it through the middle like that and just wound it around.
Oh yeah.
And that held it.
Basically, what we wanted to do is we're going to also add water as we go, but it will look like a loaf of bread, like a conventional
Very
loaf
large.
of bread. Or an unconventional loaf of bread, actually.
Murray, are you going to bring over all this salt?
Not all of them. We'll do another layer further up.
Okay.
Just getting the heap to what I think will be long enough to facilitate the materials we've got here.
And also it's about being even as well.
Just looking at it.
About 6 metres in length by 1.5 in width. Sorry about that.
So there were different sort of layers in here of, the top stuff you can see is a little bit more broken down. There were slaters and things running around on it. I've had EM in there, and that stops a lot of the smell. Effective microorganisms, do you all know about that? Okay, EM was developed by a Japanese scientist, a mixture of yeast strains of bacteria and a bacteria called Rhoda. Hang on, I'll get this off the tongue in a minute. Rhoda pseudomonas palustrius, which is a light harvester, and they sprayed this stuff around in situations where there's really degraded ponds, rivers after the tsunami. They sprayed it all around the areas that may have broken out with things like typhoid, and these particular bacteria tend to dominate any environment they're put in. They're probiotic bacteria. They work in an anaerobic situation quite well, and they've been able to reverse sort of the degradation in some ponds that have just got quite toxic. So we've put that in there with the cow manure and also the comfrey brew, which is a liquid. I packed one of these 200 litres absolutely full of comfrey leaf, and I put a weight on it, and basically top that barrel up with water so it's just sitting over the comfrey, and that'll just sit there also with the EM, effective microorganisms. If you don't do the effective microorganisms, that comfrey just absolutely stinks. It's like you get it on your hands, you won't be allowed in the bedroom for about 3 weeks.
Either of us.
So you're stock loading this
Yeah.
bacteria then.
Absolutely.
Well, it's amazing stuff. It really does stop the smell. So yeah, we've got a lot biologically going on already here. So what we've done is we've had 5 shovelfuls of that to the 200 litres roughly of water and 1 10 litre of the comfrey. The comfrey is actually a compost activator. It's a plant that brings up a lot of minerals. But it's known to be a sort of a compost activator. It helps that biological process within the compost heap.
So as well as the BD preps that we were talking about, the valerian, which is an activator, which is the one that we sprinkle on the top, the liquid, comfrey activates, and it's also got a lot of potassium and other minerals as well. Just trying to think, it's a deep rooter, so it mines deeply. It's an amazing nutritive.
We had one row of trees that we'd put the comfrey around the base of. Probably got a third more apples off that row. So yeah, we'll just grab a barrel of this, and
How many buckets are you going to put on this?
a couple of those I think at least on that heap. We'll see how we go, eh?
Watch that camera. So these wonderful, I love these smells. They're really, they're real composty smells.
So this was sort of a semi-compost because I dragged all the stalks and roots out of the hemp patch. It was too hard to cultivate it.
You want to try?
You might get a bit of that grassy stuff there, just avoid that. Push that out of the way.
Nice one.
Very small.
No, it's good. We needed it down this end. Probably a little bit more on the other side here.
So adding the elements of the farm, in terms of the soil profile, allows the compost heap to tune to the environment you're in.
And it's also minerals from the farm as well, so it's tuning in the minerals, and it's an activator.
The other thing about compost, it will take on the nature of the soil that you've made it from. So if you're making stuff out of Castle Cliff on the sandy soil, it'll be a very sandy compost.
This is when it gets really beautiful because you feel like there's a whole other environment being created.
When you come back in a couple of days and all the steam's coming off it, it's a long way to go.
It's like the resort. It's like when you plant trees and they're just little tiny trees and then suddenly they become an orchard. It's like that.
Yeah, what do anyone remember what the next process?
The course underneath, it's got the
Right,
mixture.
okay, so that's all found here.
I just want to say, if you want to feel it, if you already feel the heat. I can really just go on the you can feel it.
Liquid, is it?
Oh yeah, that as well. That can go. Somebody else can have a go. I'm just going to have a first room. Hey! Sorry.
Right.
That was assisted by the wind.
By the watermanship.
Okay, so there will be 5 holes along here. So we probably need to make one in the middle and then one at the end and then 2 in the middle.
Here's the basic step for me, I'll be right.
Okay, so one each of these goes in this side and then one of the others. So the 502, 503, 504, 505, 506.
How far do you want to get them in?
That's probably good.
Yeah, but I mean, the ball, you need a handle or something to push it in, or?
If somebody
Is it just
can
an
push
elbow
it in.
length?
Yeah, you
Oh,
can
it's
put
going
it
to be
in.
pretty tricky up.
Yeah, true.
Oh, there's the long.
Yeah. So here we go. Tyler,
Oh, they look yummy.
be the first.
I even put coconut on them.
Yeah, you really did.
Nice.
Just for you, darling.
Nice dip right.
And to go, then go the other way and then go in the middle is probably the way to do it. But you'll have to, oh no, you're right, because we have to do it 502, 503, 504, 505. I'd say this is the middle, so if you do it sort of around here. Right, someone else. Yes.
Yeah.
503, girl.
Each ball is different stuff. Each ball is different stuff.
Yeah. So there's there's yarrow, chamomile. So this is chamomile. Yarrow was the first. 504 is stinging nettle. Yeah. And then the next one is oak bark.
How sparky isn't it?
505 is oak bark, and 506 is
Can't get my glove.
dandelions. 506. Bravo! She gets the bonus points.
Okay.
Fantastic.
We'll put a sticker on here.
So would you like to put in, I think you should put the dandelion in, darling. So this is next one, which is, okay. This is 504. Yeah, I think you need one more in the middle, Murray, because there's only one more to go after that. You need more there. Yeah. So that one there, so that's the one. And then there's this one, which is okay, and then we just do the other side. And then we have the wonderful thing of the sprinkling of the 507.
Do you do the sides?
Yeah, it wouldn't